State law provides that the district attorney's most essential duty is investigating and prosecuting criminal offenses on behalf of the people. The district attorney's other duties include presenting evidence to the grand jury, deciding which cases to prosecute, investigating and prosecuting civil and criminal cases of fraud, like false advertising and unfair business practices, as well as environmental protection like water pollution and hazardous waste issues. This evening, we have the 3 candidates for the Alameda County District Attorney's race with us. We have candidates Jimmy Wilson, Pamela Price, and Seth Stewart. This evening, Terry Wiley was unable to join us this evening, and I will be reading a statement that he prepared during our opening statement segment. This evening, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give an opening statement. After that, there will be a question and answer session where each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And then at the end, each candidate will be permitted to present a 1-minute closing statement. There will be a timer on the screen that you will see. So will the candidates please wrap up your statement as soon as you see the timer wind down to 0. We have been collecting written questions from the community, and we'll be collecting questions during the forum in the Q&A section. We have and will be screening the questions to ensure that they are fair and unbiased, and will not ask questions that are not premised on facts or that are accusatory or hostile. We have also grouped and summarized questions to avoid repetition. We hope that by the end of our program, you will have more information that will help inform your decisions when you cast your ballot this election. So ahead of joining you live, the candidates selected in order for answering the questions. Seth Stewart will be first, Jimmy Wilson will be second, and Pamela Price will be third. So without further ado, I turn it over to you, Mr. Stewart, to begin your opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, so much for having me. Good evening. Hope everybody's Monday was great. I am running for district attorney because I'm a long-time Alameda County resident, and change needs to happen. I can't sit back and watch as the system fails to provide safety, fails to build trust, and fails to bring fairness to all of Alameda County. That's exactly what I plan on doing. The question here is about values and is about the status quo. Does the status quo work, or do we need change? I'm for change. I was raised by a single mother. She taught my brother and I the values of service, the value of excellence, and the value of fairness. And that's exactly what I bring here. I was hired initially in the Bay Area to be a prosecutor by Kamala Harris when she was the DA in San Francisco. And I also worked for George Gascon. I tried domestic violence cases, arson cases, kidnappings, and met with victims of hate crimes. All of those things are incredibly difficult to do. In addition to that, I also served as a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter in the United States Air Force, where I was deployed to both Iraq, later to Kenya, and also did a number of things here, right here in the state of California. The motto for Air Force Rescue is these things we do that others may live. And that's exactly the type of commitment that I bring to this job. These things we do that others may live. I'm a proud teacher. I taught at Oakland Tech, and I'm a policy leader where I drafted a law banning carotid restraints and chokeholds by the Oakland Police Department, and ghost guns and ghost gun kits here in the city of Oakland. And as from policy, those are all the things that I want to bring to all of Alameda County, including focusing on violent crime and expanding access to alternative courts and diversion. I have been endorsed by Keith Carson, Mia Bonta, and a number of other people. And by the end of this forum, I will humbly ask you for your vote. Thank you.
And Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for having us tonight. I really appreciate it. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a 32-year veteran. I've lived in Alameda County for 32 years. I'm a 17-year veteran of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I've tried just about any case you could think of. I've been, 85% of my career has been in the courtroom, trying gang cases, murder cases, child sexual assault cases, domestic violence, human trafficking cases. I grew up in San Francisco's Bayview Hunters Point, and being a DA was not my first job. I started off as a plumber, hurt my back, went to school at night, graduated from UC Berkeley with honors at the age of 40. I like to say when I joined the DA's office, my moral compass was already set. When I decided to run for DA, I went to Nancy O'Malley and told her that I was going to run for this office. And the reason why I'm running is because I feel like crime and is not being served, and victims are the people who are being hurt the most. What I did is I went to people in the defense bar and asked them how they felt about me running. I also went to the police department and asked them how they felt about my candidacy. I have been endorsed by every single police department from the tip of Alameda County to the bottom of Alameda County. I've also been endorsed by my opponents. I've been endorsed by educators. I've been endorsed by mayors, by city council members, by civil rights leaders, just about anyone that you can think of. And I think the reason why they endorse me is because they want someone in this job who they trust. They want someone in this job who cares about this community, who's lived in this community. My wife and I raised our 3 kids in Oakland. My kids graduated from public school. I care about this community. I believe that your safety is paramount.
Thank you very much. Ms. Price?
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us. My name is Pamela Price, and I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney because I am a drum major for justice. For 30 years, I've lived and worked in this community as a civil rights attorney, successfully arguing against racial harassment in the United States Supreme Court and creating new laws to stop sexual harassment, both in education and employment. I'm a survivor of the Ohio juvenile justice and the foster care system. I got arrested when I was 13 years old in a civil rights demonstration. I got trapped into the juvenile justice and the foster care system. And I literally made it from the streets of Cincinnati due to 3 foster moms and by the grace of God to Yale College. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966. I decided to run because for too long, district attorneys have forgotten that their mission is to protect public safety by advancing justice. Prosecutors have been at the heart of mass incarceration. And when you don't have an election or a contest, you don't have transparency, equity, or accountability. As our next district attorney, I will lead the DA's office with compassion, with integrity, with transparency, and a commitment to equity, and together we will protect public safety. I have been a champion for women's rights and for women since the 1970s. Indeed, one of the defining experiences of my life was serving as the lead plaintiff in Alexander versus Yale, the first Title IX case to establish that sexual harassment and sexual assault in education is illegal. So I'm excited to join you tonight as we prepare to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Title IX and the confirmation of the first Black woman Supreme Court Justice. I'm endorsed by the Honorable Delane Easton, the Honorable Desi Woods, the Honorable Jean Quan, a host of trailblazing and courageous women who know that I will be a champion for our youth and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, I will now read the statement of Terry Wiley, who is unable to be here. I will try to do so within the full 2 minutes, but I may have to cut the statement short if I can't make it, to make sure it's fair for everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. Safety is a fundamental civil right, and for 32 years, I have worked to bring safety and justice to every community. It is not a choice of one or the other. We can have one system of justice that is fair to everyone and protects everyone. My experience as the Chief Assistant District Attorney for Alameda County, the first African-American in that job, shows me when we must fight crime from every direction. We start with prevention by addressing the root causes of crime, investing in job training, mental health services, and addiction treatment. And we stand up for the vulnerable, starting with kids, seniors, women, and families. This is exactly what I have done every day, fight for those who need a champion. As a prosecutor, I work every day to keep our community safe. I support putting more well-trained officers on the street who can build trust with the communities they serve. I balance both safety and justice, prosecuting some of California's most complex criminal cases, including homicide, gang, and sexual assault cases. And I prosecuted bad cops, including the largest police corruption case in Bay Area history, the Oakland Rioters case. I know this is not a choice between safety and justice. We can have both. Over 32 years, I have worked my way up in the district attorney's office from legal research assistant to the #2 ranking district attorney. I have managed every division in the office and have made a difference in how justice is served. As head of the juvenile division, I was able to reduce juvenile incarceration by 70% between 2013 and 2017 and offer diversion programs and restorative justice programs. As the head of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I instituted a model training program of prosecutors to raise awareness and root out implicit bias and have increased diversity on our staff. Thank you to the hosts of today's forums and to all of you for being here. Okay, that is our concludes our opening statements. We will proceed in order. So the first question will go to Mr. Wilson. So the first question is, how do you intend to ensure transparency and fair treatment of the accused, including improved consideration for mental health issues?
Well, this is a training issue that is not going on right now. First of all, we need to have a philosophy to where we train our deputy district attorneys on their ethics and how you handle criminal cases. I can tell you one of the biggest problems that we have right now is that we are using the complaint to coerce people into pleading guilty, which is, it's not an Alameda County problem, it's a criminal justice problem. It has happened all around the community. What I plan to do is train our DAs on how to charge cases, when to charge them. And that also, when we talk about diversion and also when we talk about getting people into alternative courts, the fact that we overcharge cases limits the number of people that we can get into those courts, especially when we talk about mental health. The ACLU did a report on our office, and what they found was that we have a pretty stringent criteria of who we let into these different courts, and because of that, we are not providing mental health services. We're not providing adequate diversion and getting people out of the system. When I become DA, we're going to widen that criteria. We're going to allow more people into those services, and we're going to talk to our young DAs about when we offer these types of programs.
Thank you. Ms. Price, same question.
Yes, transparency is at the heart of what we need to establish for the Alameda County DA's office, which means that we need to establish new standards that we will hold the deputies accountable to. We need to establish and publish metrics that show our decision-making process. And this is key on an ongoing basis so that the public knows what we decided to charge, what the charges were, how did we propose the pleas, what sentencing, all of the prosecutorial decisions right now that are shrouded in secrecy need to be open to the public. I will insist that my deputies comply with the Brady mandate, that we disclose exculpatory evidence of any kind, because that's what the law requires. I also will commit that when there is an investigation of an officer-involved shooting or an officer-involved or in custody death, not only will we investigate promptly, but we will promptly publish the report so that people are not waiting, families in particular, are not waiting years and years to get a result. I will focus on the issues around mental illness and those who come into our system. Mental illness is not a crime, and mental illness should not be a death sentence as it currently is. And we will work with the families of the seriously mentally ill, as well as other partners to be able to really focus on how do we address the problems of those suffering from mental illness and or addiction in our system.
Thank you. And Mr. Stewart.
I think this question is a lot about when everybody who used to take math and your teacher always told you to show your work. That's exactly what the DA's office needs to do. It needs to show its work. And the way to do that is to robustly invest in data and exactly what's happening in the DA's office at every decision point, and then publish that data on the website. Right now, that's currently not happening. There's not data integrity. We know, for example, from the ACLU and Urban Peace Movement report from last year that the only data they could find about alternative courts and diversion courts was from 2017 to 2018. And what they found is of the over 55,000 cases that were low-level misdemeanors, only 2,000 of those cases were converted into any type of alternative court or diversion. So with regard to the mental health question, we need to expand eligibility to behavioral health court, to drug court, to veterans courts, to all of the alternative courts, and actually expand alternative courts to include neighborhood courts and community courts to be able to provide what is needed to be able to be successful in the system. It would also help if we also support the type of programs like the HEART program in Hayward, the mental health response program in Pleasanton, what's the macro program in Oakland, the CARE program in Alameda, to stop people from getting into the system in the first place. And then finally, we also need to make sure that we don't revoke parole or probation just because of a minor infraction. Those are all of the things that we need to think about when dealing with mental health. And again, we need to show our work and publish our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This next question goes first to Ms. Price. How do you suggest holding police accountable for misconduct when the district attorney's office relies on them to prosecute cases?
Thank you. I am the only candidate in the race that actually has prosecuted officers civilly and gotten judgments, including punitive damages against people, bad cops who commit misconduct, but I've also represented good cops who were courageous and who stood for constitutional policing and understood that they were there to serve the community. So that's the lens that I bring to my engagement with local law enforcement. I am not afraid to talk to local law enforcement. I have trained police officers, and fundamentally, that's where it starts. The DA has to be far more proactive in training police officers. What are the constitutional laws and the standards that we expect you to follow? And then establishing that I will hold you accountable to those standards. And I will be a partner in holding you accountable. As much as I'm a partner with you in reducing crime and prosecuting crime, yes, I need the officer's cooperation to prosecute crimes, but I want the officer to understand that our goal is justice. It is not just a conviction for a conviction's sake. And I am an independent actor, that I have prosecutorial discretion that I have the right to exercise because I serve the community as well as any officer on the street. And I will require them to respect my independence as well as cooperate with us as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Stewart.
I had a conversation with Kim Fox, I think it's about a month ago now, and what she said was that the communities that are most impacted by the criminal justice system trust it the least. And that's exactly right. Here in Alameda County, 44% of the people that are shot by law enforcement are Black, even though Black people only make up 10 or 11% of the population of Alameda County. And so we need to change what's happening by being able to build trust. The way to do that is to make sure we prosecute officers who violate the law. And the way to do that is have a firewall in the office that separates what you would call the traditional line DAs and the DAs that prosecute officers. So you don't run into those people if you're a regular line DA. You don't even have to worry about it. You have mutual respect and accountability. And the way to do that is to separate those DAs that prosecute those cases. In addition to that, we also need to make sure that we work with the AG's office and bring the AG in when needed. For example, in the George Floyd case, the Attorney General was the organization that prosecuted Derek Chauvin. And that's the exact kind of thing that we also need to bring here to Alameda County. And finally, I want to make sure that I want to say, with regard to taking money or endorsements from law enforcement agencies or unions or associations, I'm not taking either one. because the DA has to be independent. It's an obvious conflict of interest when the DA is taking money from either law enforcement unions or law enforcement associations, and that's not something I'm doing, and that's not something I'm ever going to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wilson?
You know, this is interesting because I am the only candidate in this race that has actually investigated officer-involved shootings. I'm also the only candidate in this race who's endorsed by the rank and file law enforcement agencies. And why that relationship is important is because our police officers serve our community. And as DA, you have a huge influence on the way that police officers engage people in the community. Without having a relationship, without them listening to you on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and what you expect from them, you will never change the way our community is policed. And you will not increase the effectiveness of police officers. I'm a member of the Hayward NAACP. We're out there talking to police officers about community policing and implicit bias, and talking to them about de-escalation. It's something that my office isn't doing. It's something that I'm doing on my own. And I'm doing it because it's important, because I came from a community where the police aren't seen always as your friend. And if you really want to change the relationship between the community and the police, you have to have a dialogue. You have to be able to talk. You have to tell them what the community is thinking and what we expect from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next question will go back to you, Mr. Stewart. How will you work to decrease the incarceration of Black individuals?
Okay, so I'm going to fight racism and bias in the system. Actually, I have a whole point on this very specific thing. What we need to do are a couple of things. One, identify the policies that are currently in the DA's office that exacerbate racist outcomes. And by racist outcomes, I mean outcomes that vary by race. And so we know that on every decision-making process in the criminal justice system skews by race, and we need to stop that in the Alameda County DA's office. One of the policies that I would enforce immediately is ending the death penalty. We know that the death penalty is a racist policy in terms of the type of people and the type of cases that get charged, and that's something that would end immediately. Secondarily, we also know that Black men are incarcerated over 10 times the rate of white men here in the state of California. And that's something that we have to stop. We have to start publishing reports about disparities at arrest, intake, and outcomes by charge. We also need to engage in robust recruitment, hiring the most talented of attorneys from all across the country, including from HBCUs. And we need to make sure that we have incredibly equitable and fair training practices to make sure that we're doing our best to believe in equity and follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Wilson?
You know, I believe in diversion at the street level. I grew up in, as I said, in Bayview Hunters Point. And the one time that I did get in trouble, I was taken to the police station and they called my mother. And I'm not going to tell you what happened when my mom got there, but you can just imagine. But what the police officer did that was really important is that they did not put me in the system. They actually put me into a program. I actually ended up going to a camp, and not some. It was a camping in the High Sierras with a bunch of other kids. And what ended up happening from that, it gave me a different perspective of what we can do at the street level, at the community level, having alternatives for kids, putting them in like soccer and like lacrosse and giving them educational opportunities. I became an apprentice plumber through a neighborhood program in the Bayview. I could not hammer a nail. We need to give our first-time offenders and our youth alternatives. I can tell you, as a DA who's been in the office for 17 years, I can look at someone's rap sheet and you can see that first offense at the juvenile level, how that person was treated impacts how they're treated throughout their lives. So we need to get people at the front end so we don't have to see them at the back end.
Thank you. Ms. Price, same question.
Thank you. When I ran in 2017, we published a paper, a position paper called The New Jim Crow in Alameda County. And in fact, it was the racial disparities within our criminal justice system that prompted me to run and be the first person to do that since 1966, because Alameda County has a dark, deep legacy of over-criminalizing Black and Brown youth and over-incarcerating Black and Brown people. When we talk about the death penalty, Alameda County is number 9 in the country in terms of the number of death row inmates that we have prosecuted, and the majority of those have been Black men. Black women are less than 6% of the population in California, the female population, but we're almost 26% of all incarcerated women in this state. And so as the next district attorney, it is imperative and incumbent upon me to address the use of prosecutorial discretion, because studies have shown that's where the disparities lie. It's with the prosecutors who are making the decisions about who to charge, what the plea disposition will be. Are you setting someone up by having them plead to a misdemeanor, but creating them a pathway for a felony? And Black and Brown youth are 86% of all juvenile felony arrests in this county. And so as a district attorney, I have to break that cycle of racism and Jim Crow in Alameda County, and I will do that.
Thank you. And I think that segues nicely to my next question to you, Mr. Wilson. Can you briefly discuss your understanding of the Racial Justice Act and explain any plans you have to implement this new law within the district attorney's office?
You know, it's the most difficult part of changing any type of system, especially if we're talking about a system that started from the inception of our country. It is like getting different people into positions of influence. I can tell you that based on my history in the DA's office, and I don't, it's as a DA talking about changing policy and changing how we look at the criminal justice system, it only comes from your ability to influence others, your ability to talk to people about the inequities that have gone on in the criminal justice system from the beginning of time. I can tell you that philosophically, it is a difficult task to get young DAs, especially people who have been in this office from the beginning of time under the same management, to change their philosophy of how we do criminal justice in our community. But I think it can be done. But I also think that you have to bring in new blood. You have to bring in different philosophies. You have to bring in different ideas. And for me, when we talk about the disparities of justice, not just in Alameda County, but in the community, it starts from deep down in our history, deriving from slavery.
Thank you. Ms. Price, same question.
As a member of the Alameda County, elected member of the Alameda County Democratic Party Central Committee, we supported the passage of the Racial Justice Act. And as a civil rights litigator, I've been litigating these issues for 30 years, challenging racism in the justice system. It's not just in the criminal justice system, it's in the civil justice system. Black and Brown people are inherently at a disadvantage in our justice system. And again, it starts with police, it starts with prosecutors, it goes all the way to judges. And 44% of the judges in Alameda County came from the DA's office. And so we know, to the extent that our criminal justice system has been infected and riddled with racial disparities, it's all the way through and through. And so I will be a strong proponent of the equity measures that we can impose and that we can bring to the table now under the Racial Justice Act and again, I've been a champion for racial justice since I got arrested in a civil rights demonstration in 1970. And I've never wavered in the fact that this country requires that it treat all citizens, all residents, regardless of your race, with dignity, with respect, and whether you've committed a crime or you're the victim of a crime in Alameda County, you need to be treated equally.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, same question.
I absolutely support the Racial Justice Act. It's an incredibly important thing, and it's relatively straightforward. It stands for the proposition that if someone was convicted due to racial bias by an attorney or a judge or a law enforcement officer or an expert witness, any one of those things, if there's racially discriminatory language, racial bias in jury selection, all of these things are steps in the criminal justice system that need to be analyzed and addressed. And the Racial Justice Act just does just that. It's incredibly important to start thinking about these things in terms of, remember what we were talking about earlier with regard to each process skewing towards race or skewing against race, and then also showing our work and deciding where those decision-making processes are and how those decision-making processes are made. This is exactly what this does. It's an incredibly good. So not only is the Racial Justice Act incredibly important, it was only that did it from the point that it was enacted forward. And right now there's a bill before the Assembly that makes it retroactive. And I also support that bill because it's important to be able to say, hey, you know what, we're only going to consider these challenges based on racial bias up to a certain point. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense to go both backwards and forwards to make sure that racism has no place in the criminal justice system. And this is one of the ways to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question is for you, Ms. Price. How will you connect with the community, ensuring that you're hearing about all concerns from a variety and spectrum of different voices?
I will do it with great joy as a person who's been a community activist and has served this community for 30 years. And part of the reason why I'm running is that I feel like I've been embraced by the people of Alameda County who have allowed me to become the lawyer that I was able to become. Our hope is that once we win this thing in June, that we will take that next 6 months to create interdisciplinary commissions where we will invite people who have been system impacted. We will bring experts to the table. We will bring psychologists. We will bring a wide variety of community organizations from across the county that I am well familiar with, from Albany to Newark and Livermore and Dublin and Pleasanton. And we bring everybody to the table and create these commissions that will look at the issues that we face in Alameda County. We'll have one on education, and I've asked the Honorable Delane Easton to work on that commission for us. We'll have one for neighborhood courts and alternatives to incarceration. We'll have one on reentry. We'll have one on mental illness. I'm working with the families of the seriously mentally ill, and they've committed to help me with this. We will have one on drug addiction. We will have one on misdemeanor versus felony prosecutions. And so those are the kinds of initiatives that we're going to start from day one, and I will continue to hold town halls and to engage with community organizations and activists throughout my term.
Thank you so much. Same question, Mr. Stewart.
So I believe in a number of different advisory boards, two in particular that I want to highlight here. One, a victims advisory board. So that would include victims of a plethora of different community groups and organizations, including victims of hate crimes, seniors, communities of color, LGBTQ folk. The entire breadth of Alameda County will be included in that group. In addition, we also want to have a youth advisory board, including youth who are formerly incarcerated. These are the conversations that we meet regularly to be able to have conversations with regard to what's happening in the community and how we can better serve them. In addition to that, the neighborhood DA program that I ran in San Francisco, I will bring over to Alameda County to make sure that we are in neighborhood groups, merchants associations, chambers of commerce, that we meet regularly with organizations to hear their concerns and address what matters. And then finally, we're going to have monthly meetings with community organizations at the table. This is critical for a lot of the reform justice work, the criminal justice reform work that's happening, not just here in Alameda County, but all across the country, and find ways to have these deep conversations to move the ball forward, to create safety, to create fairness, to create trust for everyone here in Alameda County. Thank you.
And Mr. Wilson.
You know, we know that Alameda County is huge, and we are a diverse community. We know that the problems in Albany are different from the problems in Oakland, that are different from the problems in Hayward, that are different from the problems in Fremont or Dublin. So what I believe in a community-centered criminal justice system. I believe that the district attorney's office has to get out in the community to engage each community on an individual basis. That's why I will assign different district attorneys to different communities. And we will find these small pockets of neighborhood groups that have concerns, that like to hear from their DA, like to know what's going on in our office. I know during this campaign, I went down to Fremont. It was one of the first places I visited, and I asked who was the DA, and no one knew that it was Nancy O'Malley. And then I asked, what does a DA do? And I remember one doctor told me, well, don't you defend criminals? And that was really telling to me, that we need to get out of our office, we need to get out in the community, and we need to educate people, and we need to engage community members so they know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we also need to know what their concerns are. What are their problems in their community? The only way to do that is that I have to get out of my office and I need to engage people. And that's what I will do as DA.
Thank you very much. The next question is for you, Mr. Stewart. What specific topic would you concentrate on if elected?
I actually have 12 things that I really want to focus on, and so it's hard to narrow it down to one. But to begin with, I will say one of the things we need to do is focus on violent crime. There was over 134 murders in the city of Oakland alone last year. Freeway shootings have tripled in the Bay Area over the last 3 years. Over half of those are here in Alameda County. And so what we need to do is focus on violent crime. In particular, we need to focus on gun crime. We need to prioritize gun cases. We need to make sure that the DAs have the resources to prosecute these violent crimes. And we need to advocate for common sense gun laws. Banning ghost guns, banning ghost gun kits, and having background checks are all things we need to do throughout Alameda County. So focusing on that is critical. Expanding victims' rights is critical. We also need to make sure that we have culturally informed services and language compatible services for everybody in Alameda County. Alameda County boasts 1/3 of the people that live here are from another country. In addition to that, over 44% of the people that live here do not speak English at home. That needs to be reflected in the DA's office. In addition to that, we need to make sure we fight racism and bias, as we discussed earlier. We need to prosecute officers who violate the law. We need to end the death penalty here in Alameda County. And we also need to eliminate cash bail and protect the rights of immigrants. Those are just some of the things that I want to do as District Attorney of Alameda County. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
As a prosecutor, I know that in order to have an effective criminal justice system, there has to be accountability. When I talk about accountability, I mean accountability in my office, but I also mean accountability on the streets. What's going on right now is that we are not targeting violent crime. We're not targeting crime in general. And because we are not targeting crime, we are leaving victims to fend for themselves. And people lose trust in the criminal justice system. What I will do is that I will create a crime suppression unit that will rebuild our office to attack violent crime. We also will have a reliable way of prosecuting low-level offenses. We can't have people going into our stores, looting, stealing, and open without any accountability. We need to rebuild our trial team. Right now, we don't have enough lawyers. we're down 40 attorneys in our office, so we're not serving victims. In our Dublin office, there's about 2,500 cases pending, felony cases, and only 6 deputies handling those cases. Impossible to do, impossible. And of those 6, 4 of them have less than 5 years of experience. We're talking about rape cases, murder cases, child sexual assault cases. We have to rebuild the system so it works for everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Price?
Yes, my focus for the last 30 years as a civil rights attorney has been to provide access to justice for this community. And I have the same theme and thoughts about transforming the criminal justice system. It's about making sure that it is accessible, fair, to the community, and that there is accountability for those who have harmed other people. But in the first instance, we have to make sure that the system is accessible to victims and to families of victims, as well as families of people who are charged with crime. We spend far too little time actually engaging the community in what we're doing and trying to find justice. We have to have a fair and restorative justice system that will serve the residents of Alameda County. We also need to have access for immigrant communities who need linguistic support. One of the terrifying things is that we have a system of diversion as well as prosecution that often doesn't even deal with the language barriers of people who come in contact with the system. We also have to be able to have support services and do more outreach for victims of domestic violence, which is woefully underreported and woefully unaddressed by this system, whether you're dealing with the police, the courts, or the district attorneys. And so those are the areas that I need to focus on.
Thank you. The next question is for you, Mr. Wilson. There has been a suggestion that Alameda County juries do not reflect the racial diversity of its residents. What would you do as district attorney to ensure a fair jury system in Alameda County?
This is one of my, first let me tell you, I've served 5 times as a juror prior to becoming a DA. The last jury I sat on was a murder case, and I was the first person in the chair, and I looked around the room, and the only other Black people in the room were the 2 defendants. That's unacceptable. What we need to do is that we need to train our DAs that we have to search and we have to work to have a diverse jury, that a jury of different understandings, different races, and not be afraid of people you don't know. I can tell you right now that when I came into the DA's office, that I found that people use stereotypes in deciding what jurors to keep and what jurors to kick. And they did not understand why I had so many Black jurors all the time. And I said, you just don't understand how people think. That when you're back in that room, that you need a diversity of thought. You need people thinking differently because that's the only way the system works. And as being a juror myself 5 times, I knew that. I knew that the more diversity we have in that room, the better it would be. So I'm going to encourage not only the public, but my fellow DAs to seek out people from different races. That's the key to making a fair system.
Thank you. Ms. Price?
I've had the same experience as Mr. Wilson. I've shown up for jury duty in Alameda County as well as in the federal courts where I do most of my work and I never get picked. They kick me off, but I'm often the only Black person or person of color, period, in the jury pool. And one point I went to the jury commissioner in San Francisco at the federal court and said, what is happening? And they said, well, this is the pool. This is, what we do. So the pools we've excluded a lot of people from the pools, and unfortunately, we make it difficult for people who are working people to actually be able to serve. I will fight for more access for jurors and more compensation for jurors to create the opportunity for working people and people of color to actually be able to participate. And again, I will monitor and train and hold the deputies to a standard that we won't be filing. They won't be allowed to disqualify Black or brown people or people of color on some pretext, which is what I've seen over and over again. And I've had to file motions and challenge, not only when I was a prosecutor, but when I was a defense attorney, but also as a civil rights attorney, that there's often an effort to make sure that people of color do not get to participate in our jury system. And that has to stop, and will stop under my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I completely agree with both Ms. Price and Mr. Wilson. I had a conversation with a young Black man about 3 weeks ago about his experience on jury service here in Alameda County. And what he said was that it was started out as a death penalty case. And then he said later it got moved to a life without the possibility of parole case, and he was still a potential juror, and he was the only Black person that made it to the questioning part, which we call voir dire, where the two parties have an opportunity to ask the jurors questions. And the district attorney spent over 10 minutes on him, asking him questions that he didn't ask any of the other potential jurors, not one. And so that's the exact type of experience that we need to change. I completely agree with regard to diversity. It's incredibly important to have diversity of thought. And I support the concept in making sure that we pay jurors adequately for their time. It's ridiculous that you have to think about, gee, should I go to jury service, or should I make sure that we're going to have food on the table? I mean, these are the kind of questions that people are having to ask themselves if they want to serve on a jury. So we have to make sure that people have the opportunity to serve. It creates the diversity of thought necessary to create justice in Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have time for one more question before the closing statements. And it goes to you, Ms. Price, to start. What distinguishes you from the other candidates running for district attorney?
How much time do I have?
1.5 minutes. Sorry.
That's okay. It's a joke.
I know. I got it.
I'm the only civil rights attorney that has a winning history of holding police, institutions, and corporations accountable for the people of Alameda County for the last 30 years. I've been a small businesswoman, and have been successful in managing executive teams of lawyers against some of the largest law firms in the country. And I'm the only one that had to actually argue a case before the United States Supreme Court and won. And I've been arguing cases before courts of all levels. I have experience as a trial lawyer for the last 30 years. I've raised children and grandchildren in this community. And as a mother, I understand that just because a child reaches the age of 18, that does not mean that he or she is ready. I'm the only lawyer that has published opinions, I think 13 at last count. I'm the only one that's been California Lawyer of the Year, and I'm the only one that's been honored with special congressional recognition from Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Congresswoman Mark DeSalle on multiple occasions. I've been honored as a social justice warrior, a champion of justice, and an advocate for women. And so that's been my life's work, and that's the tenacity and the courage I will bring to this job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Stewart.
I am the only candidate in this race that's an Air Force veteran. I'm the only veteran, period. I'm the only one that lives by the motto, these things we do that others may live. That's not just a saying. The photograph behind me is a save that I had the honor to take part of, 400 miles off the coast of California. I'm the only one that served in Iraq. I'm the only one that served overseas, period. These experiences give me the values and perception and perspective necessary to be successful in the DA's office. I'm the only person that's a teacher. I teach here at Oakland Tech. I taught at City College in San Francisco, and I teach at Merritt College because I believe in engaging in young people and not just saying it, actually doing it. If we support people in the front end, we have less victims and less defendants in the back end. And finally, or in addition to that, I'm the only person that's actually written a law about the criminal justice system. I wrote a law banning chokeholds and carotid restraints, and I was part of a team that made sure we banned ghost guns and ghost gun kits. I want to bring all of those laws here to all of Alameda County. It's critical to know how the legislature works, both at the state level and at the local level, and I have that experience. In addition, I have experience as a proven prosecutor. I've met with victims. I've met with witnesses who are scared to come in because they're worried about being attacked by the gang of the defendant. These are the experiences that I bring to this race, and they're critical with regard to being able to think about the issues that affect not only the district attorney's office, but the citizens and people who live in Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
You know, it's my experience, I believe, distinguishes me from the other candidates. I worked my way from the bottom up from the DA's office. And in doing so, I have tried and handled some of the most complex cases that you can think of. But I've also trained police officers on how to do their jobs better. I've interviewed people to get on the Alameda County bench. I've interviewed candidates for judges. I have trained police officers in implicit bias and community policing. I am respected not only by law enforcement, but I'm respected by people on the opposite side of the aisle. My first event that I ever put on was put on by my opponents, the defense bar. That is because they're looking for someone who they trust, not someone that leans one way or the other way, but someone who they know will be fair. I respect the other candidates, but I feel like I put in the work to do this job. I'm a known quantity. I am respected by not only my opponents in the police, but I'm also respected by judges, people who sit on the bench. You build your reputation by your work. You build your reputation by how you carry yourself, not only in the courtroom, but outside the courtroom. And I believe that the people in Alameda County that know me the best.
Well, thank you all so much. We now go to our 1-minute closing statement, and Ms. Price, you are slated to go first, then Mr. Wilson, and then Mr. Stewart.
Again, thank you for having us and for sharing this information with our community. I've been a community activist and a lawyer in this community for 30 years, and I am eternally grateful for the opportunities that I've had to be able to be successful and to represent people and to be a drum major for justice. I believe that the key to public safety, to stopping gun violence, which we haven't touched on, but which is critical to this community in this season, and to having accountability is a partnership with the community. I know that my goal is to expand restorative justice programs to give victims of trauma and abuse a helping and healing hand, and hire prosecutors who want to change lives and not destroy them. Alameda County is at a crossroads, and so the question is, do we step forward in 2022, or do we continue to invest in a failed, broken system and failed leadership? I hope that Alameda County will step forward. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
I've lived in Alameda County for over 32 years. I love the county and I love the diversity of where we live. I'm concerned about what's going on in our community right now. We're at a crisis point, and we need someone in that office who cares about not only driving down crime, but also cares about the people and the victims that live in our community. I will use my experience as a prosecutor to drive down crime. I will use my experience to get guns off the street. I will provide and share data with people in the community. I will train police officers to be guardians in their community and not warriors against the people that they serve. It is my job as a prosecutor to make sure that everyone feels that the system is safe. So I will not only protect victims, but I will protect people who are accused of crimes, because I come from a community where justice is the paramount idea of what we want from our district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Today in Massachusetts, it's Patriots Day. It's also called Marathon Monday, and it is the running of the Boston Marathon. 9 years ago, two men decided to blow up the marathon. After they did that, I decided to run the 2014 Boston Marathon and join the service. I spent the last 8 years as a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter, part-time, in addition to my duties as a prosecutor in San Francisco. That's where I got that motto, these things we do that others may live. And I believe in that. It's critical. And when looked at an opportunity to change or do something different, I decided to do something different, to serve my community. And we have an opportunity here in Alameda County to change or to do something different. And I'm asking to do something different. Let's do something different. Join me. I humbly ask you for your vote. Please go to SethStewardForDA.com for more information, and let's do something different. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank you to all the candidates for participating this evening. Thank you to those members of the community that have also watched this forum and submitted questions. We appreciate your input and enthusiasm for this race. And lastly, I want to thank the volunteers from our local leagues participating in tonight's event for their work and hard work on making this forum possible. I also wanted to let everyone know there are some upcoming forums, including the Alameda County Sheriff's Forum on April 25th and the Alameda County Superintendent of Schools Forum on May 2nd, both of those starting at 6 p.m. Just want to let you know that your local leagues also participate in the Voters Edge, which is an online collection of candidates' information. We encourage all of the candidates, if you haven't done so already, to go to votersedge.org. And if you are a member of the public, we encourage you to view the candidates' resumes, platforms, and positions there. Again, it's votersedge.org. We welcome everyone to join the League of Women Voters in empowering voters and defending democracy. Please join the League if you are interested in our educational programs or working on our efforts to improve voting in the state of California. I also lastly want to say that ballots will begin to be mailed out on May 9th. You can vote in person, by mail, or you can place your ballot in an official Alameda County ballot drop box. Don't get those confused with the mailbox. They're very specifically for your ballot, because if you don't want to do that, but please remember to cast your ballot on or before June 7th. And so thank you all very much. I hope you are all having a really great evening. Again, thank you to the candidates. You've been really fantastic, and we appreciate your participation in our forum. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.